Welcome to the deep dive. So if you're in product or UX, you definitely know this feeling. You've just finished a bunch of user interviews, or maybe you've got a huge spreadsheet from a survey.
You're just drowning.
Completely drowning. You have stacks of notes, quotes, support tickets, just raw feedback. And it's not just messy, it's paralyzing.
Yeah, that feeling is so common because, collecting the data is almost the easy part. The real work is figuring out what to do with it. You have observations, but what you really need is understanding.
And that leads us right into this idea of synthesis.
Right. Synthesis is just that process. It's how you turn this mountain of messy qualitative stuff into something clear that you can actually use to make a decision.
So our mission today is really to give you a path through that noise. We want to answer the big questions from all this data, right?
Exactly. The big three. What patterns keep showing up? What's the user problem that we really need to solve right now? And, the most important part, what do we do next?
And to manage that whole journey from chaos to clarity, there's a framework we use called the synthesis ladder. It's got these 5 steps you have to climb. You start with just the raw data, then you pull out observations. From there, you find patterns and themes.
Which is where it starts to get interesting.
Yeah, because those patterns lead you to the real insights. And then finally, those insights help you make decisions and, take action.
And the main tool we're going to talk about for climbing those first few rungs of the ladder, from data to themes, is affinity mapping.
It sounds super technical, like some kind of research jargon.
It does, but it's not. At its heart, it's just grouping. You're just putting related notes together until the hidden patterns, they just pop out.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the first step happens even before you start grouping anything. You have to prep the data first. You call these atomic notes.
This stage is absolutely non-negotiable. I mean, if you skip it, your whole map is just going to be a mess of vague, unusable ideas. The rule is simple.
1 idea per note.
One single, clear idea per sticky note. That's it.
The word atomic really says it all, doesn't it? It can't be broken down any further. So give us an example. What's a good one look like?
It has to be concrete. So a direct quote is great. Like, I didn't understand what to do after I signed up. That's one note. Or an observation of a behavior.
User click the back button 3 times.
Exactly. Or maybe just a fact, like user only uses the app on their phone, never on desktop. Each one of those is a separate atomic note.
And I see the opposite all the time, that lumpy note where a researcher just writes down a whole paragraph. Something like, user was frustrated by the slow load time, then asked about pricing, and also mentioned the confusing navigation.
That is a total disaster waiting to happen. Because where does that note go? Does it go with performance issues?
Yeah.
Or with pricing confusion?
It's stuck.
It's completely stuck. So you have to split it immediately. One note for the slow speed, one for the pricing question, and a third for the navigation.
But that sounds like a massive amount of work up front. I mean, if I've done 20 interviews, I could easily have, 1,000 of these little notes? Are teams really expected to manage hundreds and hundreds of stickies?
Yes, they are. And that volume is exactly why we have tools like Miro or FigJam now. The number seems intimidating, but it's actually proof that you've done the work. The thing is, while you have 1,000 notes, they're all small, objective facts. They're ready to be sorted.
Okay, so we've got 1,000 puzzle pieces. They're all laid out. Now we get into the actual affinity mapping.
Yep. First step is easy. We call it prep and dump. You just get all of those atomic notes into one big, shared, messy space. Everyone on the team needs to be able to see everything.
And then comes the part that I think requires some serious discipline, especially if you've got a team of strong personalities who all want to jump to conclusions.
The silent clustering, this is the golden rule. Once the notes are up, everyone starts moving similar notes together in total silence.
Why is the silence so important?
Because it prevents anchoring. If the most senior person in the room says loudly, "Oh, clearly all these notes are about wanting a blue button," then suddenly everyone else starts looking for evidence to support the blue button. You lose objectivity.
That's fascinating. So the silence forces the notes to speak for themselves. You're just focusing on what feels similar without anyone's interpretation getting in the way yet.
Exactly. You are just visually sorting the facts. All the notes about security fears go here. All the notes about getting an error message go there. And after a while, you'll see these clusters emerge. Big ones, small ones, and a few little loners.
Let's talk about those loners, the outliers.
Yeah.
I feel like the first instinct is to just throw them out because they don't fit the pattern.
And that would be a huge mistake. If a note is all by itself, but the content feels really important or, critical, you have to keep it. We call that a strong outlier.
So one person mentioning a major security flaw is more important than 20 people complaining about a button color.
100%. Rarity doesn't mean irrelevant, especially if the potential impact is really high.
What about when the data just flat out contradicts itself? Like I've seen this, where half my advanced users love a really complex dashboard, but all the new users say it's overwhelming. They hate it.
That's not a failure of the research, that's gold. That contradiction is a giant flashing sign that you have a segmentation problem.
So you don't try to average them out.
Never. You capture both sides. You make one theme called Advanced Users Want Granular Control and another right next to it called New Users Feel Overwhelmed by Options. That conflict tells you that a one-size-fits-all solution is probably not going to work.
I see. And what if a note fits in two different groups? Like, user felt uncomfortable entering their social security number. That seems like it could go in security fears, but also in onboarding friction.
Just duplicate the note. Seriously. If it fits in two themes, put a copy in both clusters. That way you don't lose that piece of evidence when you're summarizing each theme later on.
So after all that silent sorting, we have these nice clusters. The next step is to give them a name, right? This is where we start climbing the ladder from just an observation to an actual pattern.
And the quality of the name you give that cluster is everything. It has to be sharp and, most importantly, user-centered. A weak name is something internal, like the pricing page.
Right. So instead of just onboarding, which tells me nothing, a stronger name would be something like users aren't sure what to do after signing up.
Perfect. That's about the user's experience. Or maybe the pricing page feels risky because users think there are hidden fees. You want to capture the user's feeling or their struggle.
And what if a cluster is just too big? Like we have one giant group called sun-up confusion.
Then you have to break it down. That's a sign your theme is too broad. Split it into sub-themes like unclear instructions on this field or too many steps at once. Sharper themes always lead to sharper insights.
Okay, this brings us to the big jump, the place where I see teams get stuck all the time, moving past the what, the observation, to the insight, the why and the so what.
This is the whole point of the exercise. If you stop at themes, all you have is a very pretty, organized wall of data. You don't have any direction. So we have to be really strict about differentiating three things: the observation, the insight, and the recommendation.
Let's use an example. Let's say we're a fintech app.
Okay. So the observation is just the raw fact, what you saw. For example, 3 out of 5 users paused and looked uncomfortable when they got to the Add Bank Account screen.
That's just the behavior. The insight is the leap from there, right? It's the interpretation of what that behavior means.
The insight explains why they paused. So it might be: the Add Bank Account screen feels like a high-risk, irreversible step, which makes users hesitate and blocks them from seeing the product's actual value.
Wow, that's a huge difference. You've gotten to the root cause, the perceived risk, not just the symptom. And that points you to the recommendation.
Exactly. The recommendation is the action you take because of the insight. So redesign that screen to add trust signals, like security badges and clear language, to reduce the perceived risk.
There's a template for making that leap from the pattern to the insight, which I find super helpful. It kind of forces you to justify it.
Yeah, it creates a clear chain of evidence. The template is, because we saw this evidence, we see that this pattern is happening, which means this is why it matters.
Let's run our whole fintech example through that template so people can really hear it.
Let's do it. Because most new users said they weren't sure what would happen next after linking their bank. We see that users see this step as a risky one-way decision, which means our onboarding is failing to build trust at the single most critical moment.
That is no longer just a finding on a slide. That's a strategic problem statement. But let me ask you this. How do we make sure we're not just, using that template to find evidence for a conclusion we already wanted to reach? How do we avoid confirmation bias?
That's a great question. The key is that first part. Because we saw this evidence, you have to be able to point back to the specific atomic notes, the quotes, the observations. If you can't, your insight is just an opinion. You're not trying to argue for a solution yet. You're arguing for the problem definition.
Is there a quick check we can do? A filter to know if an insight is actually any good?
Yeah, I use a quick 3-part test. 1, does it explain the why or the so what? 2, could a PM or a designer make a better decision with this information? And 3, is it foundational? Would this still be true and useful 6 months from now?
Right. If the answer is yes to all 3, you've probably got a real strategic insight, not just a bug report.
Exactly.
Okay, so now we're moving to the final layer, the strategy layer, the so what. And insight is great, but you have to translate it for the rest of the business.
This is the bridge from research to strategy. You have to connect it to impact. For every single insight, you have to ask, what business metric is this hurting? Is it activation, retention? Is it just driving up our support ticket volume?
So, with our fintech example, the insight is that users stall at bank linking because they don't trust it. What's the so what?
The so what is that this hesitation is directly killing our activation rate. We paid money to acquire these users, and they're dropping out right before they see any value. We're literally wasting our marketing budget. That's the so what.
That connection from user psychology to the profit and loss statement is what makes everyone else pay attention. And once you have that, you can package it in ways the product team can use directly.
Right, you can turn it into problem statements or opportunity statements or user stories. These become your clear instructions.
So you frame it as a problem statement.
Yep, something like, new users don't understand the benefit of linking their bank, which causes high drop-off at activation and wastes our acquisition spend. It defines the problem and the impact.
Or you can flip it into an opportunity statement using that how might we format.
How might we help new users feel confident about linking their bank account so they can quickly experience the core value of our product? It's solution agnostic, which is great.
And finally, a user story for the engineering team. As a new user, I want to understand what will happen after I link my bank so I feel safe. These formats turn that abstract research into something concrete.
And that's how you make sure the synthesis work actually ends up in the sprint plan and not just in a report that nobody reads.
So let's just pull it all together one more time. The whole workflow, from start to finish.
Okay, the whole thing is, externalize all your raw data into atomic notes. Do silent affinity mapping to cluster them. Name those themes with user-centered labels. Then, draft your insights from the themes using that template to explain the why. Add the business impact, the so what, and then finally prioritize what to do based on all of that.
I like to think of the synthesis ladder as assembling a puzzle. The atomic notes are the little pieces. The themes are when you start seeing sections come together. The insight is seeing what the whole picture is about. And the so what is deciding what to do now that you've seen the picture.
And the most important thing to remember from this whole deep dive is this. If you rush to build features without having solid, evidence-based insights, you are running a huge risk of solving a wrong problem. The real value here is in rigorously defining the problem itself.
That's the shortcut to being truly well-informed. Understanding why something matters, not just what happened.
So we talked about how to handle conflicting data. If you found that critical insight, some advanced users love the complexity while new users churn because of it, what business decision would that single finding force you to prioritize immediately? Do you optimize the current flow for everyone, or do you have to start investing in real segmentation and creating different paths for different users? That's something to think about as you start organizing your own messy data.